Hey, you guys, this is Josh with Homesteading Family, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pantry Chat Food for Thought. I have a really exciting guest today that I am very pleased to introduce you to, and a great subject. We're going to be talking about the top things you need to know when buying gold and silver, and we're talking specifically about physical gold and silver that you would hold in possession, not stocks, not on paper, anything like that, but how to safely buy gold and silver. And if you guys have been following Carolyn and I for a while, you know that that's an important part of our strategy and our financial management as homesteaders in the world today. And I actually learned and am very thankful to have met Franklin Sanders online and through his publication, I don't know, some 12, 13 years ago. And through those things, he got me off to a great start. So I'm very, very thankful for his knowledge. Um, Franklin is a precious metals expert. He's also an author, a writer, a speaker, investor, and an Army veteran. He's been studying economics and monetary systems since at least the late 1960s. And since 1980, he has operated a gold and silver exchange business as founder and owner of the Moneychanger, and also now Volunteer Precious Metals. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that towards the end. But another neat part of Franklin's journey is he is also a multi-generational homesteader, but he didn't start out that way. And so he's been on a path very similar to myself and to a lot of you out there. And so really excited to have Franklin on, and let's bring him up. Welcome, Franklin. Great to have you here today.
Thanks. Great to be here.
How are you? How are things going there in Middle Tennessee?
Well, we're just barely starting in spring now.
Yeah, much going on yet? You got animals on pasture or any calves
Uh,
or
you
lambs
know,
yet?
we do management intensive grazing,
Mhm.
so we keep them on hay longer than they want to be on hay,
Yeah,
and then let them out, let the grass get up good and tall
yeah,
before we do that. Yeah.
absolutely. Good strategy. Well, hey, we've got you here today to talk gold and silver, and specifically how people can get into buying gold and silver, the do's and the don'ts, and you've got some great information here for folks. But I'd love it if you'd take a few minutes and tell us about your homesteading journey. You now have 4 generations on the homestead, but I don't believe you guys started out that way. So I'd love to just share that story with folks for a few minutes.
I'd love to talk about that more than I'd love to talk about gold and silver, to tell you the truth.
All
Uh,
right.
as Y2K came on, my wife and I wanted to move out in the country, and that was just kind of the catalyst that enabled us to do it. And we looked around and finally found some property we liked in Middle Tennessee. Um, we we have 7 children. Well, my late wife and I have 7 children, and they 2 of them were married when we came out here, and so we had bought a little place. It's about 60 acres, and started killing animals because we didn't have a squat of an idea of what we were doing. Um, and we just went to work, just kind of grabbed a root and growl. Fortunately, I knew at least 1 or 2 people who did know what they were doing, and they gave me some good advice. And we knew we didn't want to use any chemicals or pesticides, anything like that. So we started out clean and we stayed clean. It's a lot better way to do it. And it's a lot cheaper way to do it too.
Yeah.
And we were trying to get into the market, the farm to table market, and
Okay.
worked at that for a long time. But finally, uh, I have today at latest count, I have 21 grandchildren, and so
Ooh.
they were. But when we moved out here, there were about 4 or 5 of them, and they were from about 4 to 3, something like that. But as they got older, they got into what we were doing, and of course, we were raising chickens. We were doing about 1,000 chickens a year, and we'd have chicken killing day. And then we were raising cattle. Started out with the wrong kind of cattle first, and got to the right kind of cattle finally, and lambs and pigs. And it was the best thing my wife and I ever did. I have no question in my mind. A lot of people have been through here and visited us, and they see what we do and they get excited about living on a farm and everything, but you never hear from them again, And I think the reason for that is they're afraid of the work, and they're afraid to give up the prizes of living in the city. And I'm not trying to be critical. Everybody's got his own place to be, but for me, it's the best thing I've ever done. It's a more realistic form of life in the first place, because you can't pretend that you're in charge when you're out under that sky, because you know that God's in charge. And if he doesn't want you to work outside today, he sends the rain, or he does something else, and I don't think you can possibly raise human beings, omnicompetent human beings, in any other way but raising them on a farm, because they have to learn how to do everything. I mean, you can't drive to town every time a cow gets sick. You can't drive to town every time you need your spark plugs changed. You've got to learn how to do all that stuff yourself. And if you got a big family, it's fabulous. It would work you to death if you're trying to do it all yourself, but it's such a good way to raise children. So that's been the best. I mean, it was the best move that my late wife and I ever made. There's no question about that. And we had about, she died in 2016, so we had about 17 years here before she died. And we scaled back our farming operation now. We had gotten up to about 400 acres, and we've scaled that all back, and the number of animals that we've got. But we've still got a little herd of cattle. We're using a breed called South Pole now. We started out with Highland cattle, and they're great cattle. They're great animals, but they ain't commercial animals, because it takes more than 2 years to grow them out, and they never get fat. But this is a new breed, South Poles. They do great on grass. And then we have Cottage sheep, and finally, after all the kinds of pigs we tried, we found a breed that worked for us, and it's just been great, and one of the most interesting things I've ever done too, because it's not just go out there and feed the cows. You've got to know something about grass, and to know something about grass, you got to know how it works underground. You have to know how to improve the ground with the animals, and that's happened with us. We started management intensive grazing from the start, and we were doing mob grazing too, and you could go out in our pastures. The grass is 18 inches tall. The cattle come through. It looks like it's been nuked, and then it comes back and it's better than ever, greener than ever. And you can put your hand under the thatch, and it's actually wet under there because so much more water is being held in the soil. So it was, it's fabulous. I'd recommend it to anybody, but I will tell them, you're going to work harder.
Yeah.
The reward is there, but you're going to work a lot harder, and you're the one that's going to be in charge. So it all drops on your lap.
Yeah. Well, this is the life that a lot of people want today and are moving today. And that's an inspiring story, because you came from the city or town, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
My wife and I both grew up in town and city.
Yeah. And there's just a ton of people today making that transition, and, they're willing to give up some of the creature comforts of that life for the life that you're describing. And so I'm just so glad you shared that with us to share. You've been at it a lot longer than we have, and you've been on that journey, and obviously are very rewarded in it. And it sounds like you've got some of your kids and grandkids there with you, helping out on the farm.
Yeah, let me say one other thing about it too. In the modern world tends to isolate us from each other.
Yeah.
And in the last 150 years of industrial capitalism, all of those mediating institutions that used to stand between the individual and the state, which would be the church, the guild, the community, all of those things, and family, they have been weakened to such a point that basically it's the individual facing the state.
Yeah.
And that means that people get alienated. They feel like they're isolated. They feel like they're atomized. They don't know what the rules are anymore. And the best thing about living out in the country is, well, maybe it's hard to say what the best thing is, but one of the best things is the community that you have.
Yeah.
You know, people are just different out in the country. And not only that, but I mean, if you've got a big family, you've kind of got a community yourself. But you get away from that atomization. And that's not natural. Human beings are social animals. It's not natural that we feel isolated from each other.
Yeah.
So that's another very, very good thing about living out in the country and homesteading.
Oh man, well, that's a conversation we should carry on. Maybe we need to do this again and just talk homesteading. And we have a lot of commonalities there. We do the management intensive grazing ourselves. We're on a much smaller scale, but we've got 11 kids here, and other family living on the property, and it is a wonderful, wonderful life. It's a hard working life, but that's good. We're made to be producers. We're made to contribute something to the world, and that's something that we try to teach our kids in this life and try to live out together. And so thanks for sharing that with us. And you guys, Franklin is a fantastic storyteller. And at the end, we'll try to tell you where you can get some of his books, but he has documented his family's journey in a few books, and they're just a lot of fun, besides a lot of just good life lessons in them. And so when we get to the end, we'll give you a few resources. But we came here today to talk about silver and gold. And I'll just give a little intro here. That's a very important strategy to me in this day and age. And I think throughout history, but especially now, for a lot of the reasons we're living the homesteading life we are, and a lot of things we're concerned about in the world today, having a financial strategy that hedges some of the realities is really important. That's how I would say it. And I don't even remember how I stumbled upon the Moneychanger and Franklin Sanders, but it's been a very good guide to me over the years in developing that part of our plan. And so we're going to talk about kind of the 10 commandments of buying gold and silver that you need to know. Franklin is the expert here. I do want to let you know that Franklin also does, through his company, Volunteer Precious Metals, buy and sell silver and gold. And we'll share that with you as well. But we're here to talk primarily about the do's and don'ts. And I have found these to be exceedingly true and excellent guidance. So let's dive in. And I think I have these in the right order, Franklin, but we'll just jump into the first one that I have written down here. Rule number 1 is always take delivery. Can you explain to us what that means?
Well, gold and silver are the ultimate cash. And if you just think about it this way, suppose that suppose it's lunchtime, and suppose that you own a Big Mac hamburger, but the Big Mac hamburger is in New Jersey and you're in Idaho. It won't do you any good. It won't do you any good. And that's the same way with gold and silver. You've got to get them in your hands. In addition to that, to that reasoning, there are a lot of people who have claimed to run gold and silver storage programs, and one morning you wake up and find out they don't have anything after all. So the best thing for you to do, unless you get up to a scale where you can't really store things anymore, you got so much that you can't store it anymore, the best thing for you to do is to take delivery of it and keep it where you have 24-hour access. That's the safest way to keep it. So that way you get what you paid for.
Yeah. Okay. So you're buying gold and silver, always take possession of it, be able to hold it in your hands, right? Exactly. So important. Okay. Let's see here. Rule number 2 is never buy a premium.
Right. Well, premium is what you pay above the gold or silver value of the coin. And there's always going to be a little bit of that in there because everybody who handles it has his hand out. The mint that mints it wants to be paid.
Sure.
The distributor who distributes it wants to be paid. Maybe there's a wholesaler in there, and then the retailer wants to be paid too. So there's always going to be a little premium, but you want to keep that as low as you can. What you don't want to do is to buy high premium items like collector's coins or numismatic coins, or one of the things we run into nowadays is modern rarities. These people sell these coins. They're made in the jillions, but they claim they're a modern rarity and they're going to gain value. Well, they never do. It's just that simple. But they will charge you as much as 40 or 50 or 100% more than the gold value, and you'll never get out of it. You're buried in it.
That's like a
So
lot of these late night TV ads and different things you see, or ads in the paper, right? Or magazines for buying this special coin. That's like, you want to stay away from that stuff, right?
right, and it's also like, especially bad with IRAs. If you see an IRA, a company selling IRAs that's endorsed by some celebrity, I don't care whether it's Glenn Beck or Sean Hannity, whoever it is, run the other way. Run the other way, because they're going to sell you something that's way overvalued that you're not going to be able to get out of. So here's the way you figure out what you're paying. You want to know how much you're paying per ounce. What you do is you take the cost of the item and divide it by the content of the item. So if it costs you $18 for $1 of 90% silver coin, and it has 0.715 ounces of silver in it, you're paying $25.17 an ounce. If you know that, then you can compare that to the spot gold or silver price. The spot gold or silver price is the basis price that we use. That's when you look on the internet, you're going to see the spot gold or silver price. So you want to keep that price per ounce that you pay as close to the spot price of silver as possible. Now, at different times, there are different market conditions, but today premiums are very, very low. 2 years ago, they were very, very high. I usually tell people is, look, you might pay 5, 7, 9%, something like that. Try to keep it as low as you can, but not ever over 10%, because see, it has to go up that much before you break even. Whatever that premium is, it has to rise before you break even. So you're putting a roadblock in your way if you buy high premium stuff.
Right. So I think to just get between the lines here a little bit, we're telling people, don't buy from those TV ads. Don't buy from, most of probably those magazine ads or whatever with the fancy, apparently limited coins. But you got to go buy from somebody, and you probably want to shop a little bit, because I imagine different sellers are going to have different premiums.
Yes.
Is that correct? So you're trying to find somebody that you can buy directly from that's going to provide you the coin, and you want to shop those premiums to find the best deal that you can. Is that kind of an accurate description?
That's right. And one of the things that we found out is people who advertise that they're the lowest seller are not always the lowest seller. I mean, there are a lot of people on the internet, big companies that will that have pretty good prices. What amazes me, what I've found out, is that usually our price is about the same as theirs is, or lower. So you just have to look, and if you can find a local dealer, that would be great. But unfortunately, usually local dealers are small and they charge a high markup. Not always, but you just have to look around. In other words, you got to be a smart shopper.
Yeah,
just boils down to that.
Like anything else, you got to do a little bit of your diligence, know where to stay away from, and then find a few good people that you trust, and find the best price, right? Just like we want to do buying anything else.
Right.
Okay, well, let's talk about rule number 3, which is to buy bullion for business, numismatics for fun. And you're going to have to break this down a little bit. There's probably going to be a lot of people here that don't know what numismatics are, and they're not really buying for business either. So, but I get the principle. Let's just break that out.
Yeah. Well, numismatic coins are collector's coins.
Right.
And that's great. If you want to collect coins, that's wonderful. But that's not an investment in gold or silver. That's an investment in a coin. I mean, you've got say a $1 gold piece that has about 1/20 of an ounce of gold in it, but you're going to pay 5 or 6, 10 times the gold value for that coin. So it's fun to collect things, but if you're in the business of trying to hedge your paper dollars and ensure your future, you want to stick with business, and business is bullion. And bullion means they're bullion bars and they're bullion coins. What it means is just simply that the item is valuable solely for its gold or silver content.
Very good. Rule number 4, and this is fun. This is getting into some strategy here. Buy silver first, then gold. So let's unpack that, because a lot of people just think gold. They're going to go just straight to gold. That's what you hear most people talking about, putting out there. So why buy silver first? And kind of in that, like, if you're going to buy silver first, when then do you start buying gold, or what does that look like?
Right. Well, this has to do also with one thing that's a lot of people are interested in today or concerned about, and that is central bank digital currencies. People are really, they're concerned that they won't be able to operate outside of that CBDC system. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, for most of history, most of mankind has only known silver as money. It's been the major money because it has so much lower value per unit than gold does.
Better for like exchange, right? It's easier to make common everyday exchanges with because of that lower value.
Right. Like if you get US 90% silver coins, that's the dimes, quarters, or halves minted before 1965. Mm-hmm. It takes 14 of those dimes to make up 1 ounce. Well, that's a lot of transactions. That's a whole lot of transactions if you have to use it as money. So that's the reason I say buy the silver first. It covers 2 things. It gives you a hedge against the depreciation of the dollar, but it also gives you something to use as money if you get into a situation where you have to use the silver and gold as money. So after you've got enough silver that you're beginning to feel comfortable about it, then you can start buying gold. And that, because the gold is a lot bigger ticket item. I mean, like today, it takes about 85 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. Now that's extremely high, and I'll talk about this a little later. That's an extremely high ratio. That means that silver is significantly undervalued against gold. So that's another reason to buy more silver first, especially today. So we'll have I think we've got a chance to talk about it later, but in any event, I'll mention it here. You can swap gold for silver. When the ratio, the price of silver and gold, of gold and silver, goes up and down, because silver is a much smaller market than gold, and so it's more volatile. So right now, it takes 85 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. 6 months or a year down the line, it might take 43 ounces. So what I can do at that point is I can take my silver and swap it for gold. And even though I have to pay capital gains tax, I'm going to come out way ahead. I'm going to end up with about twice as much gold as if I just bought gold in the first place. So that's a way that's a strategy we use to make our gold and silver holdings grow while we're waiting for the price to go up.
Interesting. Good strategy. Yeah. You mentioned in there, like, when you have enough silver, how do we help somebody strategize? Like if they were gonna get started, so you're recommending start buying silver first. How do you strategize like enough? Like how do you think? I mean, we're all different economically, right, in different positions. But how does one person think about that to kind of have a goal to say, okay, I'm gonna build up some physical silver with the idea to move to gold. But how can we think about that to know, okay, I think I'm doing pretty good here, I'll start moving to gold?
Well, I think it depends on your family and who you're trying to provide for. And so I would want enough silver that I could last for 2 or 3 months with just nothing but silver, just spending out of that silver. And then I'd go to gold.
So no, go ahead.
Well, it's not a hard and fast rule either. It depends on what you're comfortable with. And it's real hard for me to address that for people because people have different risk tolerances,
mm-hmm.
and they have different goals. And what I'm thinking about first is what will best take care of my family?
Yeah.
What will give me the best advantage for my family?
Well, I like the 2 to 3 month rule. That's, a lot of people teaching financial literacy are going to say, hey, you need at least to have at least 2 to 3 months of cash reserves for an emergency situation. You lose your job, you need to be able to pay your bills for 2 to 3 months, right? In
Right.
if you were talking cash. So this kind of goes along with that, just covering your basics for a certain amount of time. 2 to 3 months probably being a minimum for a lot of us as a goal, just to create that hedge and that security. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. And I'll mention something else too. The best strategy, if you're just starting to buy gold and silver, and a lot of people don't have a big chunk of money that they can throw into it right out the gate.
Sure.
Uh, a good way of doing it is buying some every month, just like you'd use a savings account.
Yeah.
And Volunteer Precious Metals has a program for doing that called Monthly Acquisition Plan, and I have to tell you, it works.
Yep.
I've seen people do it, and they invest from $300 to $3,000 a month, and over the course of a year, they bought a considerable amount of stuff, and they're getting their price at dollar cost averaging is what it's called.
Yeah.
So they're working out a better price for them, average price for themselves too.
That's exactly how I started with you guys. So I don't know, 2010, somewhere in the fallout of the 2008 crash, and it got me thinking about those things. And that's exactly what I did, because I didn't have a bunch of money to buy a whole bunch, and so went with that strategy, just biting off little chunks, just kind of like putting money into the savings account. You're just putting it here, and that's a wonderful strategy.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay, rule number 5, kind of following up on the last one, is to buy small gold first, then large. So we've moved from silver to gold, and now talking about gold, talking about buying smaller gold, then large. What does that mean?
Well, the logic for buying smaller gold today is $2,300.
Yeah.
How many times do you ever go shopping with a $2,300 bill? Answer is never. You just don't, unless you're going looking for a house or something. So for that reason, I want to buy small gold coins. The problem is that small gold coins are often much more expensive per ounce than the large gold coins.
Sure, it makes
Now,
sense.
right now we have an anomalous situation where their premiums on just about everything are low, but they're still not low on these modern issue fractional gold coins. Like, for instance, you've got the American Eagle gold coin. That's a 1 ounce gold coin. Well, they make an exact half ounce, an exact quarter ounce, an exact 10th ounce too. But the premium on, for instance, the 10th ounce is going to be about 12 or 13%. Well, why would I buy that when I can buy a classic gold coin like a French 20 franc, which is about 0.2 of an ounce, and pay 3.5% over the melt value for it? So
Sure.
I want to get the cheapest. I'm always going for the cheapest thing I can get. I mean, because I know one thing for sure. One axiom I know about the gold and silver market: over time, premium always disappears. Over time, premium always disappears. So I'm not going to get back those extra dollars I put into premium today. So that I want to buy small coins, but I want to buy small coins that have low premium. And I want to buy those first and then buy the larger coins.
Makes sense. I love this because it makes it very easy to step into, right? It just makes it very approachable, very easy to get going. And I want to encourage all of you out there to think about that, because you don't have to go and throw down $10,000 to get started. You can very much, just like you would put a little bit of money aside, you can get started with this and really build momentum over time, and then scale up, and love that. And that's what a lot of people need to be able to do. All right. Rule number 6 is to never buy exotic coins or modern rarities or anything you don't understand. I think this is so important, because like we were talking about earlier, people see so many things out there that are pitched as this great next new thing or great value or whatever.
Right. And the buyers don't understand them. They don't understand the reason why. They don't understand the market they're in and the forces in the market that drive the prices of them. And so you just shouldn't buy anything that you don't understand. It's just that simple, because you don't know when to sell. You don't know if it's a good buy or not a good buy, because you don't understand the background for it and the matrix that it exists in. So you just have to be very careful about that. I've been in the gold and silver business for 44 years, and I've seen every kind of scheme you can imagine come and go. And the gold and silver business is just like any other business. There are a bunch of people that are honest and straight and conscientious, and then there are a small number of crooks. But the small number of crooks can really hurt you if you're not a little bit wary. Just exercise some common sense. And if you could ask yourself, do I really understand this investment and what drives it? And if the answer to that is, well, not really, then stay away from it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Very good. Rule number 7, and of course, this is super important, and we'll need to talk about how to do this. But know your dealer, know who you're buying from. How do you do that today when you don't often have a walk-in that you can buy from? And even if you do, like you were saying, they're usually probably going to be a small outfit and have to have a higher, premium charge. So what's important about that, and how do you go about that in today's day and age?
Well, the first thing is you can always check the Better Business Bureau. You can, in that person's area, check the Better Business Bureau, see what kind of rating they have. The second thing is if you've got a friend who has already done business with these people, your friend may be able to recommend them. One of the things that I don't like about dealing with anybody on the internet is there's no face. If things go wrong, there's nobody I can go talk to. And if I call them, I get a phone tree and wind up with somebody who's got an Indian accent. And I can't get my problem solved that way. So I want to do business with somebody that's a real human being. And I think generally if you can find a company that's a family operation, that helps. Mm-hmm. But check with your friends for references. Check with the Better Business Bureau for references. Those are important things. And then there are places now that you can check on the internet to see how somebody does business. So
call them up and ask questions, right? I mean, you can get a good feel, absolutely. If you get a real person and you can find out their story and why they're doing what they're doing. And I would think you should be comfortable with who you're talking to.
Absolutely. That's right. Because you're going to be sending your money to them. And you want to be very comfortable about that.
Yeah. If they make you feel stupid, if they make you feel like they don't have time for you, like you don't know anything, uncomfortable, then man, I think that'd be somebody you'd want to stay away from.
Absolutely. Yeah. They ought to be perfectly willing to share their knowledge with you. In fact, from my standpoint as a dealer, it's better for me if you know more, because it means that you're going to come to me already knowing what you want, and it makes it a lot easier. So every dealer ought to make some effort to educate his clientele, his customers.
Yeah. Yep. All righty. We're getting through them here. Rule number 8, what governments can't find, they can't steal. All right. Tell us about that.
You remember I said earlier that gold and silver are the ultimate cash.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is you've got to find a place to put them away where nobody else can find them. And especially not the government. Now, I'm not one of these, I'm not one of these people who believes that the government's going to try to confiscate gold again. And the reason I believe that is because this is not 1934. Gold forms no substantial part of the monetary system now the way it did then, when all the banks had to have 35% of their reserves in gold. So I don't think they're going to do it, but just in case, I want my gold and silver to be stashed in a place that it's safe. And the best way you can do that is put it somewhere where nobody can find it. So anyway, this is not the Great Depression era. This is not 1934. And I dare say there are very few people who trust their government today. The government says, "Oh, give us your gold. Trust us. We need it." You know, they're not going to do that today. They're going to laugh and say, "Oh man, I don't have any gold." You know.
Yeah. So you don't think even with digital currencies, and I mean somewhere we're going to have a failure of confidence in this system, and we're going to be glad that we have some silver and gold. This is my opinion. I don't know when, but and I think we're going to be glad we have it to use it, but you don't think there's an incentive for the government to get involved with that even under those scenarios, or maybe that scenario is even just too far out?
Well, let me just say this. The people I know who own gold and silver are not the kind of people who trust the government,
Yeah.
generally speaking. If they trusted the government, they wouldn't be buying gold and silver, because the reason they're buying it is because they know that the government is destroying the dollar, stealing from them every day. So
Yep.
by definition, almost they don't trust the government.
Yeah.
So you anyway, I think if the government tried to confiscate gold or silver, what are they going to do? Send jackbooted thugs around to everybody's door and knock on the door? I mean, I just wouldn't want to stir up that nest of hornets if I were them, because the prize is not big enough. I think if they're going to steal something, they'll go after your IRA. And they won't necessarily steal your IRA. What they'll do is they'll say, well, look, you've got this IRA and you've got stocks, or you've got gold or silver in it or something else. You need to sell all that stuff and buy these nice 100-year bonds we're going to put out. And they're going to pay 2% a year. So you have to put 60% of your IRA in these 100-year bonds. That I think is more likely the kind of thing that they would do. Now, it amounts to stealing your money, but it's not quite stealing your money. They can present it so that it's not. But
no, it'll be for the common good. They can make some rules and some laws, and it'll all be for the common, the good of everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. The more we digitize our assets and put them out there in that way, the easier it is for the government to do that, as opposed to having something in hand that is hard to find.
Right.
So I like that. Okay. Well, have a good place for it where it's not easy to access. So really, I think what you're saying is even a, may not want all of it in a safe that's visible. You may want it kind of tucked away somewhere.
Well, if you look around your house, you'll find a lot of places that are invisible. They're visible but invisible.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you an example. If you've got central heating, you've got an air return somewhere, and it's got a grate about that big over it. And if the duct work comes in from the side, you can take that grate off and stick a bunch of gold and silver in that duct, and nobody will ever know it. And when they walk through the room and they see that grate, they don't think anything about it. They don't look at that as a hiding place or so forth. So there are a lot of places in your house that you can put things. Then there, and this is without ever going to the extreme of what's called concealment construction, where, for instance, you have a deep closet, you put a false door halfway toward the back of the closet that's activated by an electric switch somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do something like that, you could hide a bunch of stuff. But what I'm saying is there are other places that are just not visible.
Yeah.
Even though you see them. One more example: when you're standing at your kitchen sink, there's an inset in the cabinet where there's a plate called the kick plate right next to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
You can pry out that kick plate, and there's enough room under there to put $100,000 worth of gold and silver. There's a lot of room under there. So just that's the kind of places that I'm talking about.
Lots
Visible,
of
invisible.
Yeah, lot that's just gives lots of ideas. Be creative. Yeah. Okay, rule number 9. This is a very specific one. Never swap bullion coins for US $20 gold pieces. That obviously must be a thing, because you're so focused in here on that. What's going on with that? Why would somebody be tempted to in the first place, and what's wrong with it?
Well, because big sales operations will find people who have gold bullion coins, and they'll say, "Oh, you ought to swap them for these US $20 gold pieces because they're going to rise a lot faster than gold itself does." Well, let me tell you, I got the statistics. I got them back. I got the numbers back to 1998 on US $20 gold pieces. And the premiums have been going down on those coins almost that entire time, with one exception. So if you want to stay with bullion, you want to stay with something that with a gold or silver item whose price is intimately tied to the gold or silver price. And it doesn't have all of this extra premium, this collector's value, scarcity value, all that other stuff. Forget all that. That's not why you're buying gold and silver. You're buying gold and silver to get the most number of ounces you can get, because that gives you the most insurance coverage possible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Stay away from that $20 gold swap. All right, here. Commandment number 10 says, never break the law.
Well, I tell you what I'm thinking about there primarily. You know, there's such a thing in 1979 under the hilariously misnamed Bank Secrecy Act. They started passing these cash reporting requirements. So today, if you give somebody more than $10,000 in cash, they have to report that transaction supposedly. And a lot of places, I mean, banks report cash transactions as low as $3,000. So don't go into a coin dealer with $11,000 and say, "Hey, I want to buy some coins, but I want to pay cash," because that coin dealer looks at you and thinks you're a government agent provocateur coming in there to trap him and take him to jail, you know. So, but you shouldn't be doing that anyway. I mean, it's a stupid idea to break the law. Who cares if the government knows whether I've got gold or silver or not? I don't care. They got to find it first, and that's another issue. So, just be careful not to break the law. Don't get so paranoid about cash reporting and stuff like that that you break the law or ask somebody else to break the law, because it's not going to go well if you do.
Yeah, and there's no reason to here. We're talking about operating legitimately within our rights in the open marketplace, and there's, you know, it's a lot of what we talk about with people is, you know, we're all responding to a lot of things going on in the world that we're concerned about, and we're identifying problems, but we need to not walk in fear of the problems. We need to identify those problems and then walk in confidence and in positive solutions. And I think that kind of applies here. Don't get into fear, and even like don't go start buying gold and silver out of fear. I mean, you know, there's an understanding that fear creates some knowledge, some understanding, and we take a positive action. But don't just go acting in fear in any of those things. That's no way to live, and it's just going to lead to trouble. And we don't need to live that way. We can have confidence taking good actions, and in this case, like hedging with some gold and silver. Transferring some of our wealth and our assets to that instead of having it all in that deteriorating dollar or in, you know, stocks and other things. Well, that's I've got a couple other questions, but that was kind of the 10 commandments there of buying gold and silver. Before I get to a couple other questions, are there some things in there that you'd want to communicate to people? You mentioned a little bit earlier, something that we'd want to flesh out a little bit more to share with people. Is there, you know, considering all this and thinking about buying gold and silver themselves?
Well, one of the advantages of having a good dealer is you can go to him and say, "Listen, I want to spend X number of dollars on gold or silver, but I want to get the lowest premium I can get." And low premium does not always equate to a good buy, because there's some things that you can buy that are so exotic that you won't be able to resell them easily. So this is one of the advantages of having a dealer that you can trust and that you can go back and forth with, is you can call him up and say, hey, what's a good buy today? And he's going to know. He's going to know what it is, and he's going to help you get the most you can get for your money. So that's one of the things that I do.
Good. Yes, you do. I want to talk about that here in a minute. I've got a request here to ask you about something new that's come out on the market. I don't know how many people know about it yet. It's an interesting concept, and they're called gold backs. I'm sure you're familiar with these.
Yes.
This it's kind of paper money where they're putting real gold into it, so it does have a real gold value to it. I've looked at it a little bit, don't know a whole lot about it. I think it's an honest idea. But from the sake of, and they're encouraging you to buy gold this way, from the sake of that concept, and I'm guessing we're going to see more things like this in the future. I wouldn't be surprised, but just, can you talk about that concept? Does that make sense?
It can. I don't like to say anything critical of
Sure.
anybody else's attempts at monetary reform, because we need everything we can get. But the thing about gold backs is, it's a great idea. It's a new technology, and they're not exactly paper. They're some kind of plastic or stuff. But anyway, I was just going to I priced those out. And here's the reason that I'm not very enthusiastic about them. They've got more than 100%. They've got about 100% premium over their gold content.
But because of the production, right? I mean, that's what I saw, was just like, this is a cool, I thought, man, this is a cool idea. I love the idea, but it's got to have such a production cost to it. I didn't go and do the exact math, but just glancing, I was like, this got to have such a high production cost that your gold's going to be expensive.
Oh yeah. Well, and here too, you remember I said the rule for figuring out what you're paying per ounce is to divide the cost by the content. Well, if you've got a gold back that has 1,000th of an ounce in it, and it costs $3.86, you think, well, that's pretty cheap. Well, it's not cheap when you divide it by 1,000. When you convert it, it turns out you're paying $3,860 an ounce for it, which is way more than you want to pay. So I like the idea. I like the idea of encouraging people to use gold and silver. I'm all for that, but that's just too expensive a way to do it in my mind.
Yeah, that's hard. I hope they can find a way, because it's a neat idea to getting a currency and a system of exchange out there. I think it's really, really cool. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, not so much to, more than anything, just help people understand value, right? When they're trying to buy, and they need to, they need to stretch their cash dollars if they're going to buy gold and silver as far as they can. And at this point in time, I think that's a hard way to do that, even though it's a really, really neat idea. Any other tips for first-time silver, and I'm going to put silver first in this case, first-time silver and gold buyers for getting started?
Well, one of the things that we talked about earlier was to buy regularly, especially if you have limited means. You want to just try to buy once, as often, at least once a month, and just start stacking it up. That's the best way to do it. Don't try to time the market and say, oh, well, it's at a low now and I'll buy some now. Look, I've been doing this for over 40 years, and I can't time the market. I mean, I probably can do better than some people, but it's a mystery. Nobody can read the future. So the best thing to do is keep stacking gold and silver. And the reason is because that the government has not changed the activities that it engages in, that destroy the dollar. Namely, they want to send everybody a check. They run these big deficits. They take their bonds over to the Federal Reserve. They monetize the bonds. They create new dollars based on those bonds. And that's not going to change. That's built into the politics of today. And until there's some great crash or some catastrophe that forces that to change, it won't change.
Yeah.
So you know that they're going to keep depreciating the dollar, and you know that eventually gold and silver react to that depreciation by rising in price. So the best strategy you've got is just to keep accumulating it.
Yeah. Hey, one more question I'm thinking of that I've heard asked, and this is kind of leads into that thought of, because I think a lot of people do expect, we know that what they're doing can't go on ad infinitum. There's an end to it somewhere. I'm not getting into predicting when, but they're, you're destroying the value of something somewhere that has an end game. And one of the questions I've heard is how does gold and silver transition that? If you're holding gold and silver, we tend to think of it in terms of dollars, right? That's natural. That's what we have. But some people, I think, that might be new to thinking of this, maybe like, how does that help them through? How does that transition, besides being able to barter, which would probably be a transitionary, or being able to buy and sell with gold and silver, that would probably be a transitionary phase, I would guess. How does that help get through to whatever's next?
Okay, well, let me explain why gold and silver are valuable. They're valuable because human beings value them, and they have valued them since memory runneth not to the contrary, for all of human history. So what happens in the case when a country's currency completely collapses, just goes away, like it did in Germany in 1923? They printed so much paper money that it went to 1 trillion. The mark went to 1 trillionth of its gold value. 1 trillionth of its gold value. So if you had gold after the currency reform, then you have carried your value, your wealth, over the abyss of that currency reform.
Yeah.
That's the reason to do it. And it maybe you use it, as you say, transitionally, as people say barter, but what they mean is use it as money. Right. But the main thing is it carries value across the abyss of economic turmoil. And that means also that on the other side of that turmoil, you're going to have something to help rebuild with. You're going to have capital to help your community rebuild with. So I think both of those are very good reasons why I want to buy gold and silver. And it always works that way. I mean, it always has in history anyway.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that explanation. That's good. Well, hey, people are going to have a lot of questions. And where can they go to learn more from you and about you? And about
my website is the-moneychanger.com. It is not themoneychanger.com, all one word. That's a porno site, and I have nothing whatsoever to do with that. But it's the-moneychanger.com. And then actually the gold and silver business belongs to my sons now, and their website is volunteerpreciousmetals.com. And you'll find in both of those sites, you'll find articles, and on their site, you'll find some videos too that explain gold and silver investing. And just dig in. There's plenty of information there.
Yep. What about your books? I want to give people, those are just such good reads. They're so much fun and so encouraging.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about At Home in Dogwood Mudhole. There are 3 volumes.
Yeah.
They can go to fourrivers.com.
No, it's
4 Rivers Publishing.
It's fourriversstore.com.
Yeah, fourriversstore.com.
Okay.
Just look it up for me, Christian.
Yeah.
And we'll get it all in the notes. You guys that are listening, we'll make sure and have you this in the blog notes, in the podcast notes for you to link through.
What that is, it's the books are like filled with monthly reports on our move out into the country and getting used to it, and the things that we're doing and the things that we're discovering and so forth. And it's a family history of our attempt at homesteading.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have to admit, I think they're a lot of fun too.
Oh, I want to say, because you said reports, and I understand the way you wrote it, but report sounds a little dry. They're not dry. They are a ton of fun. And there's something you can read to your kids with the family. They're just a whole lot of fun. They were very inspiring to us. So you guys listening, this has just been a great session. Some of this I learned from Franklin a long time ago, but it's been a good update for me. And I want to encourage you to take it seriously. He's got a wealth of information at the Moneychanger website to just educate you further, give you good knowledge. And we're not really here to promote the sales. We're here to give you knowledge. But as Franklin said, you want a recommendation. You want to find somebody that you know, that you trust, to find a good buyer. And I don't have any affiliation with Franklin. I don't make any money, but I've been buying from him and from his sons for over a decade. And they're going to answer the phone. They're going to talk to you. They're going to help you find what is the best price, the best deal right now for you. And so I'm going to give my recommendation. I don't know what else is out there because I've just stuck with them over the years, but I want to give my recommendation to you guys listening that they are trustworthy and a good place to consider as you're doing your research. And so Franklin, thanks for hanging out with us today, man. It's been great to chat and get a refresher and share all this knowledge with folks.
Oh, well, it's been a lot of fun for me too. Listen, let me give you an 800 number for Volunteer Precious Metals. It's 888-661-4093. But they'll find that on the website if they go to volunteerpreciousmetals.com.
Cool. And we'll drop all that in the notes. You guys out there, whether you're watching or listening or reading on the blog, it's been great to hang out with you. Have a blessed week, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.